everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth, along with my co-host Ryan Skolrud. Good evening, Mr. Skolrud from the Pacific Northwest.
Good evening, Mr. Morganroth in the southeast.
Yeah, we're definitely southeast out here, that's for sure. And right now, you should call it the soak east because we've been getting a lot of rain down here, like you're accustomed to rain, so it's second nature to you, but we call it the soak east at least this weekend.
Yeah, we get our a fair share of rain up here in the Pacific Northwest. So,
I can only imagine. You have sleepless in Seattle. I have sleepless all the time, so it doesn't make any difference, anyways. You have Starbucks. We have Starbucks. I imagine you have all kinds of coffee shops. Me, I have those thing called Diet Mountain Dew shops or Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi shops. Go figure. So, anyways, let's go ahead and enlighten our audience about what you have on store here for Week 7.
All right. Well, let's start off with the biggest news that started off this morning is that the Ravens have officially traded for Yannick Ngakoue. I never can pronounce this name. Ngakoue. There we go. Yannick Ngakoue.
Well, I've had David Levin help me with the name, so I have a little bit of an edge with this since he's a Jacksonville guy anyways.
Was traded from Minnesota to the Ravens, so this is now his second team or third team this year. And really Minnesota got almost the exact same package back that they gave up in order to get him. I think instead of giving up a second and a fifth, they ended up getting a third and a fifth. So, but Minnesota is just so that team is in trouble. They may get, that team may get blown up here in the near future, this off season. So, to go along with that, the Ravens have also looking likely to sign Dez Bryant to their practice squad. Dez Bryant is not going to help this offense whatsoever in terms of on the field. He may help with like some leadership and that sort of thing, but in terms of personally on the field, he's not going to do anything for this offense. The Ravens, I think that this just adds one more lethal weapon to that defensive line. This is going to make the Ravens defense that much more intense to have to deal with. So really the Ravens, I think in terms of their defense, this should help them step a lot more, especially considering last week they really struggled against Philadelphia, who was down to their starting wide receivers were what? Travis Fulgham, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and Greg Ward. And so just the fact that they almost came back to tie that game up was amazing. So moving on, Jamison Crowder did not practice today, which is not good for his prospects for this weekend going up against the Bills. Jamison Crowder has dealt with an injury earlier in the year. When he is on the field, he averages close to 10 targets a game. He has lost a little bit of fantasy value with Joe Flacco becoming the quarterback. He's not targeted as much. Sam Darnold leans on Jamison Crowder when he's in. So Crowder is moving down a little bit in my ranking just because of the uncertainty of whether or not he's going to play this week. Make sure to be watching tomorrow the practice reports. If he gets in a limited session tomorrow, that is decent news. It at least gives a hope for him to play on Sunday.
Okay.
Jonnu Smith practiced in full today, and A.J. Brown did not practice. So as far as the Tennessee Titans go, it is very good news that Jonnu Smith practiced in full today. We weren't sure how the practicing was going to go with him after he injured his ankle and had to leave early in the game on Sunday. But in his absence, it was Anthony Fursker goes off. Was it like 8 catches, 9 targets or something like that for 100 and some yards and a touchdown. So, big day for him. I think that Jonnu Smith having a full practice today means that he is going to be playing against that Pittsburgh defense this Sunday, which is, I mean, that's going to be a big game. Two undefeateds going against each other. With A.J. Brown not practicing, he's probably dealing with the same knee injury. I think they said it was a knee. He did have a bone bruise that cost him a couple of weeks on his knee. So we'll see if that's what's kind of causing him to miss practice. Again, watch for tomorrow to see if he gets at least a limited session in. If he doesn't, Corey Davis is officially activated from the COVID reserve list. And so he should be in line to absorb some of those targets, as well as Adam Humphries if A.J. Brown is not able to go this weekend. Joe Mixon is not practicing. This is definitely something to watch for all the fantasy owners that have Joe Mixon. He left early in their last game with a foot injury, did come back in the second half, but now has not practiced Wednesday, did not practice today. If he misses time, obviously this is going to be Giovanni Bernard's backfield. I don't think that Bernard can quite put up the same type of numbers that Joe Mixon can. However, not that Joe Mixon's numbers have been stellar, at least as far as fantasy points go. He's been putting up an okay amount of yards, just had trouble getting into the end zone. I think that Bernard can provide, running back 3 flex play if Joe Mixon doesn't go. So Jarvis Landry, turns out that he's actually dealing with a broken rib, which the only comment I saw was him quoted as saying it hurts. So we'll see. This is one of those things where I know that in the past guys have gotten cortisone shots and worn flak jackets to kind of help with that. I don't see him necessarily playing this weekend if this is an actual thing that he's dealing with. Something to monitor, but I would think that he is not going to be playing this weekend.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either if I had a problem like that. I mean, it's hard to walk around in regular life, let alone on a football field where you're going to get crunched by 250, 300-pound players. So that thing hurts, and you don't need Percocet, you don't need ibuprofen, you need a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
Take it from a guy that's had to deal with pain medication, with neck surgery, shoulder surgery, back surgery, etc. ... Continue.
Dallas Goedert. This is the news. He was officially able to or eligible to come off of IR this week. He is not coming off IR this week. He is looking at a potential return of week 10. Which really hurts this offense for Philadelphia because Zach Ertz officially had to go on IR, and he'll be off for 4 to 6 weeks. So we may be looking at Philadelphia and the way that Wentz has utilized that offense for most of his career. He's always been very pass heavy to tight ends, and now their tight ends are Richard Rodgers and I believe Hakeem Butler, who was a wide receiver that they've converted to tight end because they are so just stripped in terms of bodies who are healthy to play. I did see that for tonight, Deshaun Jackson is playing. Travis Fulgham and Greg Ward, I believe, are the wide receiver 2 and 3 in this one. So we'll kind of see how the offense plays this week for Philadelphia, knowing that they are without Goddard and Ertz for at least 4 weeks.
Okay.
Michael Thomas is dealing with a hamstring injury. Definitely interesting to see that it's not his ankle sprain. This is actually a hamstring that he tweaked in practice. I saw a joke that he must have tweaked it pushing another teammate. So again, this is not something that we necessarily want to see, especially those that spent the early draft capital on Michael Thomas and have already missed him for a few weeks. So again, this is just something to watch. See if he gets a limited practice in tomorrow. and just kind of watch the waivers. Have like a Traquan Smith ready to go on your bench if Michael Thomas does miss time. The Raiders' entire offensive line was sent home today after right tackle Trent Brown tested positive for COVID-19. Because of that, the Raiders and the Buccaneers were originally scheduled to be the Sunday Night Football game. Because of that and the potential of that game not being played due to the COVID-19 tests, they have flexed the Seattle-Arizona game to Sunday night, which I'm not disappointed about that.
But you aren't.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I think football fans in general aren't going to be disappointed in that. With you've got two electric quarterbacks, two offenses that are high powered, put up a lot of points. So it should be a really good game Sunday night. Though now that I say that, watch both teams struggle, and it's like a 17 to 20 game or something like that. So we'll keep watching what's going on with the Raiders. As long as the rest of the offensive line continues to test negative and shows to be asymptomatic, the game for Sunday between the Raiders and the Buccaneers is still scheduled to go on at 4:00 Eastern time. So that's it for the general news and notes that I've got.
Okay, well, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and continue on with your sleepers and busts, and then we'll go ahead and some of my nuggets. How's that sound?
All right. So going through this week, I was trying to kind of look at some players I thought could be really good have really good matchups this week, and some guys that you're regularly going to play them, but this just isn't the week to do it. So starting off, my big QB sleeper for this week is Teddy Bridgewater. Going up against the New Orleans Saints, the Saints give up the fourth most amount of points to the quarterback. Now, a lot of that is quarterback to tight end. That's the connection that the Saints defense has struggled with the most. They give up the 15th most amount of pass yards, the Saints do. So, like I said, a lot of it is touchdown dependent to the tight ends because they face guys like, I'm going back. I believe it was it? Oh shoot, I don't have that with me. But they've had a couple of tight ends that have racked them up for points. They actually give up 2 points above projection on average each week to the quarterbacks. So this is a statistic that I get from a guy named I believe it's Matt Harris. I could be wrong there. But he does this thing called the Harris Index, and what he does is he actually goes through and tracks over the last 5 to 6 games the average amount of points over projected that players get, that position groups get against defenses. And so this is one of the big things that I use because it shows more of like current trends for offenses and defenses compared to, hey, this is what they've done all year. When some teams improve, some teams get worse. So the trends right now is that the Saints give up, allow quarterbacks to score a couple points higher than what they're projected each week. So another thing to look at is Teddy Bridgewater this year, because of the weapons that he has, his average depth of target, his average intended air yards. So how his intended yards and completed air yards, so and how deep those passes are going when they're caught, all are at least a half to a full yard farther than they were last year when he was playing with the Saints. So Bridgewater, like I said, has better weapons, has really good weapons this year. He doesn't just have to throw to out of the backfield to Kamara and Mike Thomas, who runs a lot of short routes. He's got guys like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson that run a little bit more of the deep routes. So that's something to kind of look for in terms of quarterbacks. I got a couple running backs here. Number one is Justin Jackson. Just got activated or was kind of brought up after the Austin Eckler injury. But the Chargers are going against Jacksonville, and Jacksonville has given up the 5th most amount of points to running backs. They give up the 5th most amount of rushing yards per game, and they average giving up 5 points over projection to running backs every week. So Josh Kelly, I know, was kind of projected to be the guy behind Austin Eckler. But Josh Kelly has been one of the most inefficient runners so far this year in terms of time it takes to get him to the line of scrimmage after he gets the ball, as well as the amount of yardage it takes for him to get back to the line of scrimmage. Justin Jackson is a little bit more of a straight line north and south runner. And so because of that, I think that he is more primed to have a better game than the rookie. So I think that Josh Kelly, Justin Jackson he's not going to necessarily light the world on fire, but I think the matchup is there. And with how Justin Herbert's been throwing the ball, I think it could open up some spaces for Jackson to have a decent game.
Okay.
Going to the other side of the ball on Carolina, in the Carolina Saints game, Latavius Murray is a running back that I've got as a potential sleeper for this week. Now, obviously, Alvin Kamara gets most of the work, especially in the passing game. That being said, Carolina gives up the 6th most amount of points to running backs. So they give up tons of points to running backs. They average giving up 3.7 points per week over projection. Murray, just in terms of his running right now, is 7th in the league in run efficiency. So that means how much yardage he covers before getting the line of scrimmage. And he is 1st in terms of average time behind the line of scrimmage. He gets from the time he gets the ball to the line of scrimmage is right about 2.5 seconds, maybe just a little bit under. So he is getting to the line of scrimmage in a hurry when he gets the ball. He's also 3rd in rush percentage over expected. So what that is the amount of times that he gets the ball. There's an expected, based on where players are on the field, an expectation of how many yards he's going to get. 50% of the time, he gets more than what is expected based on the situation. So he has been a very efficient runner when given the opportunity. Carolina also gives up the 15th most amount of rush yards allowed, and what's big for them is they've given up the 3rd most rushing TDs. So while they're kind of middle of the road in terms of giving up the yards, they really struggle in the red zone, keeping running backs out of the end zone. So, as far as wide receivers go, Cole Beasley, he has been so underrated all year, going up against what we can basically call a non-existent Jets defense. Beasley is averaging as many targets right now as Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, and T.Y. Hilton. He has had 18 of 21 games since the beginning of 2019 with 9 PPR points or more. And 5 of the 6 games this season, he's had at least 6 targets. And that one game where he was under 6 targets, he had 4 catches on 5 targets for 30 yards and a touchdown. So he is being used a lot in this offense for the Bills. At one point, I think he's on pace for just right around 900 yards on the season. And he's tied for 19th in the league, and that includes tight ends, wide receivers, and running backs, tied for 19th in the league in red zone targets in the NFL. So he is, when they get down near the end zone, he is one of the main targets that Josh Allen's looking at. So definitely provides some upside there. Another guy, T. Higgins. Cleveland gives up the 4th most amount of points to the wide receiver, 4th most amount of passing yards, giving up the 5th most amount of touchdowns. And just based on opportunity and the fact that he has the history with Joe Burrow, he's averaging 8 targets and 5 receptions over the last 4 games. So he is getting the work, and this shows a really good matchup for him. This one hurts me to have to say, but Christian Kirk against Seattle, I think, is in for a big game. Seattle gives up the most fantasy points to wide receiver. Now, here's what's interesting. Most of the points that they give up to wide receivers are in yardage and catches. Seattle has only given up 8 passing touchdowns all season, when half the league is giving up more than 10. They just give up a ton of yards. They give up, I think it was 370 yards per game through the air, and they give up the 6th least amount of rushing yards. So look for Christian Kirk to have a big game. He is also in the top 20 in yards after catch per reception, and top 10 in terms of targeted air yards. So his average completion, or the average target, he's 16 yards behind the line of scrimmage, or beyond the line of scrimmage. So look for him to be going deep and them to take a couple shots to Christian Kirk against Seattle. My last sleeper is Jimmy Graham going up against the Rams. Not the best matchup. Rams middle of the road in terms of giving up points to the tight ends. But what really helps is Jimmy Graham is second in the league in red zone targets, only to Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce has 12. Jimmy Graham has 11. He's averaging almost 2 red zone targets per game. And he's also fifth in the league for tight ends in terms of touchdowns with 4. So he is getting used. So if they get down to the red zone, Jimmy Graham definitely is a guy to be looking at. So a couple of busts for you, actually 3 here. Josh Jacobs against Tampa Bay. The Bucs give up the 8th least amount of points to running backs. They give up, in terms of how running backs do against projection against them, running backs on average are scoring 4.8, almost 5 full points under projection against them over the last 5 weeks on average. So this has all the signals of this is going to be a bad game for Josh Jacobs. Over the last 16 regular games, he's only scored over his projection in 38% of those games, and right now is averaging about a point under projection over those 16 games. And Tampa Bay gives up the 13th least amount of rush yards per game. So Tampa Bay's defense has been really, really stout, especially when you look at what he was able to that defense was able to do against Aaron Rodgers last week. I really see this as a tough game for Oakland to get going. So
Oakland?
Or sorry, dang it, I still do that. Las Vegas.
Oh, that's okay. This is the longest I've been quiet in a while, so I was waiting to get involved. So I figured I'd give you a geography lesson here. That's right. And by the way, let me preface something about Josh Jacobs. Okay, it's a tough game if they play it. So,
yeah, if they play it. Yeah, so we've got that. We've got that going for it too.
Oh, come on, Ryan. I had to ride you a little bit about the geography, but go ahead, continue.
All right. The other 2 kind of potential busts I have for this week is Cooper Kupp going up against Chicago. Now, this is kind of a back and forth. Chicago is the 4th best in terms of giving up points to the wide receivers, so they very tough against wide receivers. Wide receivers are averaging 4.6 points under projection each week. But what helps Cooper Kupp in this one is the volume. He's averaging 7.5 targets per game, which is top 15, top 20. And he's 8th in the league in terms of yards after catch per reception. So he has the ability to get loose. It's just a matter of, can he get loose? He's going to get the targets. I mean, last week against San Francisco, he had 9 targets, but only ended up with 3 catches. It didn't help. One of those was a drop in the end zone, which would have really saved his fantasy day. But for me, I'm shying away from Cooper Kupp a little bit this week. I think the better option for the offense for the Rams is going to be Robert Woods. They use him a little bit more in the run game, the sweeps. So I think I'd feel better about using Robert Woods in the offense this week than Cooper Kupp if you have Rams wide receivers. And finally, Cam Newton. Right now, in points per game, he is, I believe, top 12 for quarterbacks. I just don't see him playing well in this one. San Francisco gives up the fifth least amount of pass yards per game. And Cam Newton this season is in the bottom 10 in average completed air yards. He's in the bottom 4 in average intended air yards. So he's not throwing deep. He doesn't have wide receivers that get deep. You've got Julian Edelman, who's mainly a slot guy that runs a lot of shallow routes. N'Keal Harry has not been able to get loose very much at all this year. And then you've got guys like, Damian Byrd and who else? And then they've got a few other guys that just aren't being used. And a lot of it's passes to the running backs. Really, what's going to help Cam Newton is his ability to run. But I'm not banking on that against the San Francisco defense that is playing better even without the defensive linemen that they've lost this year. So those are my potential busts and sleepers for Week 7.
Okay, so let's go back to Dallas Goedert. You say he's potentially going to return in Week 10. Is that correct?
Potentially in Week 10.
So my question to you is this. When are the Dallas Cowboys going to be potentially returning?
Oh, man.
In baseball, they call it a curveball.
Yeah, here's the thing with Dallas. I was one of the people that was thinking that Andy Dalton would still be productive in this offense. This is the most amount of weapons he's ever had.
Right.
The problem is the offensive line is absolutely shredded with injuries.
Right.
I mean, you can only do so much when you get about a second and a half to pass before you've got guys in your face. This last week, they only had, was it on Monday night, they had one starting offensive lineman who was starting last year for Dallas.
Right.
And that was Zach Martin, who in the second quarter went out with a concussion. So that offense, like I said, that offensive line has been absolutely shredded. I still think that Ezekiel Elliott is a top 5 running back. That's not going to change. I think it would be better if they used him more and used him more efficiently. But yeah, I think Dallas is kind of toast unless they can figure out what's going on with that offensive line.
All right, but Ryan, it was just the analogy, pal. But I love your detailed analogy, so I'll throw a couple of nuggets at you anyways. The Seahawks are among teams that interest in Antonio Brown. Is he really worth the trouble? You got Pete Carroll, so if anybody can handle the personality, Pete can. But do they really need another wide receiver with the group that they have?
Whether they need him or not isn't the question.
Okay.
They want to have him. That's what it is. And honestly, if you think about it this way, there's nothing really that they can add to this defense to fix any of the problems unless they trade. Well, we have traded away enough picks. We don't have a whole lot this season in terms of the Seahawks. So because of that, your best option is to continue to improve the offense. Okay. And if you can add someone like Antonio Brown to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, even if it's spreading out the production a little bit more across those three, that makes for an absolutely deadly offense. I mean, if you get to the point where Tyler Lockett is your quote-unquote wide receiver 3,
right?
You have a phenomenal receiving core.
Right.
And so I think that, Russell Wilson, I know has been stumping for him all year. So I think that this is very much a possibility. I don't necessarily mind it again on like a 1-year deal for this year and then let him go after that. Just depending on how he does. If you can use him for half a season,
right,
I'm fine with that. I don't think that he can cause enough trouble in the locker room in that amount of time.
Well, it's not like Pete Carroll has, would he have Josh Gordon there for a period of time, I believe?
Josh Gordon technically is still there waiting to be reinstated. Once he's reinstated, he will be back on the Seahawks.
All right, so therefore, Pete Carroll's not afraid to have problem children since he knows how to deal with them anyways. Children, come to class. Don't worry. This is Pete here. I'll make sure that you guys are at the front of the class. And if you're nice, you might just get paid. And if you're even nicer, okay, we might find you at the dollar store, pennies on the dollar, because you're not worth going to the $10 store. Get the analogy? Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's only the Diet Mountain Dew kicking in. We're just getting warmed up. Are we? I don't know. What can I tell you? All right, well, with that said, okay, Mike McCarthy wants the Cowboys to handle things as men, not complain in the media. My goodness me, us guys in the media certainly realize that we don't need any tide, okay? in the laundry room, but it seems like these players like to air their dirty laundry out with us guys surrounded by microphones, notepads, notebooks, pencils. You get the drill. I think Mike McCarthy's right, and I don't care about the anonymous sources. If you can't put your name on it, screw you, folks.
Yeah, I really don't understand why players do this. I think it's just everyone wants to be heard, but they don't want to deal with the ramifications of being heard, I think is what it comes down to. And so so they want to have their voices, thrown out there and put out there, but they just don't want to they don't want to deal with the consequences of someone figuring out, oh, it was me. So
are you
I hate this stuff too.
Do you ever hear the game show many years ago? I know this is way before you were born anyways. I don't know if your folks ever heard of it. But there's a town named after it in New Mexico. You'll never get it. But you ready? Put this one between your ears. It's called Truth or Consequences. You know who used to host that show?
No.
Bob Barker, The Price is Right. That was long before it. These players know the truth or consequences. They don't want to stick their name behind it. So what can I tell you? Once they find out who they are, then they'll be sent packing if they do it anyways. Let me tell you, being a 40-year journalist like I have been, Ryan, okay, that's this. If we said something was off the record, it was off the record. But that was when there were ethics, the AP style book. These guys don't know what it means. Go out there and take your cake and eat it too, but don't put your name behind it. Go figure. Mike McCarthy is the man, and he just wants to make sure that he's dealing with a bunch of petulant children. Is that my rant of the night? No, I've been ranting all week about it. You're just the latest one that's got to listen to it. That's all. Okay, I feel better.
All right.
Let's talk about some games of last week and for this week. Obviously, I was at one in Jacksonville where the Detroit Lions beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 34-16. Matthew Stafford finally checked the box, throwing a touchdown pass against the Jaguars to your favorite tight end, T.J. Hawkinson, for 1 yard out. Means he's thrown a touchdown pass against every team in the league. But DeAndre Swift, okay, you talked about the Jacksonville Jaguars being vulnerable to the run. This DeAndre Swift kid's pretty good. He really, really is. The last Lions rookie running back that ran for over 100 yards was in 2017 when I was at this game. The Lions beat the Miami Dolphins here at Joe Robbie Stadium. Kerryon Johnson had 158 yards. Well, DeAndre Swift had a pretty good game, had a 54-yard run, 116 total, couple touchdowns. And that ain't good enough. Adrian Peterson had a touchdown, and T.J. Hawkinson had a touchdown. Lions win. Jaguars run their fifth kicker in 5 weeks, fifth straight loss, and 5 straight where they've given up over 30 points. My goodness, even a bunch of horses wouldn't be able to go in the pasture and eat their grain out there. But I'll tell you what, DeAndre Swift was very swift, and the Jaguars were a feeding frenzy in a game that wasn't even that close, 34-16. Those last set of points were just window dressing as far as I'm concerned. So what were your thoughts about the way the Detroit Lions, Jacksonville Jaguars turned out? I will tell you, though, the protocols in place, Ryan, were really good. I felt very comfortable with what the NFL had done. And despite that little momentary scare with all the practice squad, the Jaguars probably didn't know if they really showed up anyways for this football game, regardless of what could have happened. But what were your impressions of the Lions in Jacksonville?
Well, as far as I was able to tell, it looked like the Lions for the most part were able to get to Gardner Minshew and kind of upset his timing a bit. Having someone like DJ Chark as your main wide receiver, he gets targeted a lot. I mean, we've seen a couple of games where, Minshew's targeted him like 14, 15 times. He just hasn't been able to get loose, and, this game was no different. I think that Gardner Minshew is right now struggling for the most part because of the fact that the offensive line isn't all that great. They're dealing with just a lot of issues. The defense can't seem to get off the field to allow the offense to get into any kind of rhythm whatsoever.
Right.
And so, this is the Jacksonville Jaguars are just a team that's struggling. And Detroit, winning a couple games now, trying to, I don't know if they're actually trying to win a couple for their coach or not, or if they're just trying to save face. The Lions are playing much better, especially in the passing game. I think it's no coincidence that kind of started happening once Kenny Golladay was back.
Right, yeah, and over 100 yards in that game, too. Thanks for bringing that up. So
yeah, so
he's a tall target for Stafford. So other than the fact that the Empire State Building might be taller than Kenny Golladay, you're right. Stafford had a pretty good target there, but continue on.
Yeah, so I think that, and TJ Hawkinson getting loose as much as he has, I think that Hawkinson is getting more acclimated to the NFL game. So overall, obviously a great win for Detroit, and the fact that they were able to allow their running backs to get loose as much as they did is definitely helpful. We'll see if they can do it against a defense who can actually stop the run, though.
What about DeAndre Swift? Do you think he's a good pickup? I don't know how many teams. What his stock is out there.
As far as I know, DeAndre Swift, I believe, he's right around the, I believe, 65% range in terms of rostered. He's one of those guys that it's kind of been a conundrum. People think that he, thought at the beginning of the year that he was obviously going to be the guy in terms of the running backs for Detroit,
right?
Especially drafting as early as they did with having Kerryon Johnson, but he just never really had gotten the chance, and now that he has, he's taken, he's rostered in 89% of leagues now, and a lot of that I think had to do with the fact that this. Tuesday was waiver wire night, so I think that he was picked up a lot in the last 48 hours. So,
well, he had opening day jitters when he dropped that pass in the end zone where he should have had it for a touchdown, but that stuff happens to the best of them. So, but this kid has tremendous upside for sure. We'll go over a few more games and roll through it. Tampa Bay 38-10 over the Green Bay Packers. I guarantee you one thing that wouldn't happen in that game: Aaron Rodgers wasn't relaxing.
No, again. We talked about it earlier. This Tampa Bay defense is really, really good. They've been able to shut down the run game, and the one thing that they've improved on the most is working against the pass game as well. So, last year a lot of people can remember they were one of the best teams against the run, but couldn't stop the pass if their life depended on it. And so they've really improved on that. They've developed more of a pass rush this year. And so they're a very tough defense. Yeah, it was basically after that first 10 to nothing, coming back and scoring 38 unanswered points, really took it to Green Bay, and I liked what I saw from the offense from the Buccaneers. Ronald Jones has proven to be an NFL running back. Was it 3 games in a row, I believe, with over 100 rushing yards? So. Big game from him, and honestly, I'm kind of expecting the same this next week.
Yeah, and they were mad after what happened in Chicago when they should have won that football game, and Tom Brady simply doesn't lose 2 games in a row. Let's continue on. The game everybody had us buffaloed on that we thought would be close. Shame on all of us. As Gomer Pyle would say, shame, shame, shame. I don't know how well I go ahead and imitate Gomer real well, but for those of you that think I did a decent job or don't, 38-7 was the score. The Pittsburgh Steelers blow out the Cleveland Browns, and I'll tell you what, we were all fooled by this one here. I thought at least Cleveland would give it a game, but boy, they didn't compete. The last time Cleveland won a game in Pittsburgh was when Tim Couch was under center for the Browns. So obviously Big Brother beat the daylights out of Little Brother, and for all you Browns fans, maybe you could have a pretty halfway decent season, but the Pittsburgh Steelers, by the way, I don't know if you remember this, but I think the Pittsburgh USFL team was called the Pittsburgh Maulers, and that's exactly what happened last week over at Heinz Field. They looked like the Pittsburgh Maulers, and the Cleveland Browns, they didn't look very good.
No, they didn't. And again, I think for me, it had to do, when you start off with with thrown interceptions, and one of them gets returned for a touchdown. That obviously that's going to cause some issues, and that's going to cause, to immediately go down 10-0. And then in your next two possessions, 3 plays for 1 yard, 3 and out. Next time you get the ball, 5 plays, 21 yards and another punt. 5 plays, 17 yards and a punt. And then after that, it's 4 plays and another interception. You can't get the offense going. In the pass game, the run game, the Browns have to have a solid run game in order to get things going. And Pittsburgh has been so tough against the run all year. Really, where they've struggled the most is in terms of giving up a lot of yardage in the passing game. And
by the way, a little trivia question for you. You know who the Heisman Trophy running back was for the Pittsburgh Maulers many years ago?
No.
Mike Rozier. Ever heard of him? Just thought I'd go ahead and throw that USFL analogy for those individuals old enough to understand it. But just thought hey, listen, you know what? Who knows what fantasy football would have been like during the USFL? All I know is that Donald Trump owned a team called the New Jersey Generals back then, and I covered the 1984 USFL championship for those of you folks that are really interested in what I just had to say. Continue on, Ryan.
And so, yeah, the Browns were going to – I knew the Browns were going to struggle in this game. Pittsburgh, like I said, Pittsburgh's been so tough against the run, and that really the run game is where Cleveland has to get going in order to be successful, and that didn't happen. So,
but did you think they'd struggle that badly? That's my question to you, because we all thought it would be the game of the weekend. Boy, were we wrong.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily think that they would struggle this much, but again, they had to. They had to get the run game going if they're going to be successful. And again, Pittsburgh has been so tough against the run. That was going to be an uphill climb.
Okay. Let's go to a game that occurred right down the road at Joe Robbie Stadium. I don't care about advertisers' names. They don't pay me to pronounce them. So I'm going to go back to Joe Robbie Stadium. Miami Dolphins 24, the New York Jets nothing. The final game that Ryan Fitzpatrick will start. Well, a good way to go out anyway. So did the mop-up work. Ryan Fitzpatrick did the dirty work. And Adam Gase looked like a coach ready to hit the unemployment line, while Brian Flores is looking to let people realize that there can be a Bill Belichick coach that might indeed work out. So outside of Mike Vrabel, that is. So what are your thoughts about the Miami Dolphins whitewashing the Jets?
Well, I mean, the Jets are just plain terrible. I mean, they've gotten rid of all of their players just about, and the ones they haven't gotten rid of, it's because they're injured. So, the Jets are a terrible team, period. Adam Gase is a terrible head coach, period.
Right.
Beyond that, Miami looks pretty good. They have weapons for Fitzpatrick to throw to, and now for Tua to throw to. Myles Gaskin, for me, it's fun to watch him. Because he was a University of Washington Husky, which was the team that I always rooted for growing up. And so seeing him do what he has done after being like a 7th round pick last year and really stepping up and being the lead guy in that offense in terms of the running backs has been a lot of fun to watch. So, yeah, I think that, Miami, it'll be interesting to see how it goes with Tua after the bye week. But I like where that organization is moving for right now under Brian Flores.
All right, yes or no question, Ryan. Do you think they should have made the change to it right now, or do you think they should have waited longer?
I think they should have waited a little longer, and simply because of the fact that they're winning. They're 3-3.
Right.
I think. What are they? 1 game behind Buffalo now.
Right.
And so, I think they should have waited, but it's why I'm here commenting on things and not making the decisions for organizations. So
okay. So you think they should have waited? I kind of think they should. I don't think it would have hurt them to hold a clipboard, but Stephen Ross being the type of owner who knows to say he didn't have anything to say about it, and he's all about star power. So go figure. So I don't know, but meanwhile, he's a starting quarterback. We'll get into him more next week on our broadcast. Kansas City Chiefs 26, Buffalo 17. This is a matchup that you could probably be seeing maybe later on in the playoffs. And, of course, now Le'Veon Bell is going to be part of the mix for Kansas City, which we'll get into next week. But give me a quick impression on this football game.
For me, the big thing in this one was, I think, the move to add Le'Veon Bell lit a fire underneath Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Okay.
Because what did he run for? He ran for like 160-some yards in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting fact, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is second in the league in yards after contact behind Derrick Henry. And so for a little guy who wasn't supposed to, wasn't supposed to be used a lot in the run game, supposed to be maybe like mostly used in the pass game, he is proving to be a solid runner behind this line.
Right.
And so it'll be, I think, obviously in terms of fantasy, he gets downgraded a little bit with the addition of Le'Veon Bell. I don't see Le'Veon Bell taking over. I think this will, again, be more of a hot hand approach, but I can see still Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting most of the work with Le'Veon Bell mixing in. This is just a game, I don't think this is a true depiction of what these teams can do because of how much it was raining. That's just going to throw things off in general anyways. So,
well, okay. Well, like I said, I have a feeling you might see this matchup later on in the postseason. And you're right. I think Le'Veon Bell's a good insurance policy, a complimentary back. You can never have enough good weapons, especially when you can get them cheap. So, all right, let's go down to Big D, where Big D looked like Little D. And that team called the Arizona Cardinals, the birds were flying high over AT&T Stadium. Kyler Murray against Andy Dalton. We've talked about Andy Dalton having a corned beef hash offensive line, to put it mildly. And, of course, Arizona can be dangerous, and they certainly showed it in prime time on Monday night.
Yeah, I think that the big thing for me to take away from this, again, it's the offensive line is absolutely shredded for the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
And Ezekiel Elliott losing 2 fumbles.
Right.
He had never lost. I think he had lost a total of 5 fumbles in his career coming into this game. He had never lost more than 2 fumbles in a season and loses 2 in this game. So definitely I know that he was having a rough time. I think part of it, again, is maybe while they were able to finish off the win last week for Dak, I think, that whole win one for the Gipper, teams tend to get their butts handed to them when they go that route. It's just the way it works. And so I don't think that they're completely ready for what's going on in terms of not having Dak as their quarterback anymore. He's more mobile than Andy Dalton. Again, if the offensive line can figure out a way to protect Andy Dalton, I think they'll be fine. But any team that has any sort of a pass rush is going to give them problems.
I think really what happened with Ezekiel Elliott is I think he felt like he had to carry on more responsibility is what he did. Anytime a running back like him, who is an impact playmaker, feels he has to carry more responsibility, it gets to his head. He's not concentrating on what he's supposed to do. And that's no knock against him. Any superstar feels like, I got to take over. My biggest, my teammate went down. I've got to do more. And as it turns out, he had butterfingers that day. But I think Ezekiel Elliott will bounce back fine. It was just unfortunate. I just didn't expect the Cowboys to get blown out, especially when I had a feeling that they might win it, especially being at home. But it goes to show you I'm not a prognosticator anyways, and nor do I care to be. Otherwise, I'd be broke. All right, so let's talk about 4 games this week. Detroit Lions 2-3 against Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons have something in common with the Houston Texans. Win one for the interim coach. Of course, we know that Romeo Crennel lost last week. We're not going to get into that. In the second game, Raheem Morris, his second game against Detroit, the Lions can pull to 3-3 with a win. And, Matt, and I'll tell you in the month of November, I'll have the Lions schedule. We'll talk about it next week. But they've got some winnable games in the month of November for sure. But the Lions 2-3, Atlanta 1-5. How do you see the Lions doing out in Atlanta?
I could definitely see the Lions winning this.
Right.
The offense hasn't been great in terms of overall yards. I think they're just starting to get to kind of get their mojo going. But the Falcons defense is the worst in the league. And so I think that this sets up well, not only for Stafford and the pass game with Golladay and Hawkinson, but for, perhaps DeAndre Swift can make it 2 in a row for 100 yards. The Falcons defense is just that bad. So I do think that the Falcons can still put up points against Detroit. But I do think that overall the Lions come out ahead in this one.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth, Matthew Stafford, DeAndre Swift played up the road at the University of Georgia in Athens. So I like the Lions winning like 27-20. All right, we'll talk about the a heavyweight fight here between the Pittsburgh Steelers, Tennessee Titans, Ben Roethlisberger against Ryan Tannehill. Geez, 2 undefeated teams at 5-0. I'm wearing this Miami Marlins hat because I do predict that Tennessee will win this game. And considering the Tennessee Titans rallying cry resembles the Miami Marlins when they had the COVID-19 outbreak, see some irony, similarities. I'll give you my prediction first. I think that you're going to have a slugfest here, that Tennessee walks away with a 35-31 win over Pittsburgh. Where do you compare with that?
Yeah, I think that Tennessee can win this one. I think that Tennessee defense does struggle a little bit. And so I think that this is going to be more of a high scoring game. Derrick Henry can neutralize any big time rush defense. He has that ability with how big he is and with how much how much of a load he can take. I mean, was it like second or third game of the season when the Titans played against Denver? He ran for over 100 yards, but had 30 plus carries in that game. And so he's able to take on a massive load like that. And so I think that if he gets that kind of a load against the Steelers, I think it's going to help set up the pass game, in which though the Pittsburgh Steelers are the best offense in the league, they do give up a lot in the pass game. And so that's going to open things up for Jonnu Smith if he's healthy, Corey Davis, Adam Humphries, again, A.J. Brown if he's healthy. If they've got all 4 of those weapons in the pass game, I think that this could be another big passing day for Ryan Tannehill. So,
you going to give me a score?
I'd say 31-28.
Okay, well, we're right in the same ballpark. So. All right, well, you're all too familiar with in your neck of the woods, although we played in the desert where I used to live. Seattle 5-0 against Arizona 4-2. I'm never going against Russell Wilson. I realize that when the Lions walked into the Phoenix area and beat the Cardinals, I don't know if the Lions just caught the Cardinals on their heels, but they did get a win nevertheless. But, Russell Wilson against Kyler Murray, it certainly deserved to be flexed, and wonder why. It's a great football game. So why don't you give me your prediction about your hometown team?
Well, I definitely think this is going to be an interesting game. Looking at the Cardinals, though, I think that, again, Seattle hasn't necessarily beat great teams. They've beat so far this season. Let's see. I'm going to go to the Cardinals first. The Cardinals have beat the 49ers in week 1, where there was no preseason, so everyone was kind of up in the air of what's actually going to happen.
Right.
They beat the Washington football team. They lose to the Lions, lose to the Panthers, and then they beat the Jets and the Cowboys, who have no offensive line and don't have Dak anymore. So their offense has been able to put up points. They're averaging right around 30 points a game, along with the Seahawks. It's a matter of, what is their defense going to be able to do against a team that can really put up points just as quickly as they can. So I think, again, this goes to be in a high-scoring game. Seattle is going to be ready to come out firing. I think that Chris Carson could be a big part of this game, not just because, obviously the pass game is going to be huge, but the Cardinals struggle against the run game. They give up a lot of yards. And so Chris Carson, I think, could be the star of this game Sunday night.
Score.
I'm going to say 35-31 Seattle, and Chris Carson will have 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards.
I guess Seattle 37-30. Fair enough. You said they score a lot of points. They give up a lot of points. 37-30 works for me, especially coming from a guy in that part of the country. Final game we're going to talk about. Maybe who knows if there'll be one, but we have to say it until we're told otherwise. We both are on the NFL mailing list about COVID results. We'll see, and everybody knows that COVID cancellations nearly cost me a game in Jacksonville last week with the Lions, but thankfully we did get the game in. Tampa Bay Bucks 4-2 against the Raiders 3-2. So we think, but presumably if the game is played, I could see Tampa winning this like 27-21.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of those kind of mid-range scoring games. Both defenses are kind of middle, or both offenses are kind of middle of the pack. Both halves have explosiveness. Their defenses. I mean, obviously the Buccaneers' defense has been great. They're third in the league right now in total team defense. But the Raiders have not been slacking. They're 12th, so they're still top third of the league. I think that overall, some of the strengths for the Buccaneers are stronger than the strengths of the Raiders, and just for, the pass catchers, the overall leadership of Tom Brady, and just the experience on that team. I think that, for me, is going to be kind of the factor that turns the game for Tampa Bay over the Raiders. So I'm looking like, I'm not even saying high score. I'm 24-21, maybe even 21-17 Buccaneers.
That's okay. We're in the ballpark in all of them, so that's very good. So good stuff, Ryan, as always. So with that said, we'll find out how, since everything is all on tape anyways, we'll see if whether we look good or we don't, but it don't make any difference, because I love the fact that we can go back and forth about it, and we'll call it the TBD version, to be determined, as they say in our industry. And as you probably learned about the old game show, Truth or Consequences, I have a feeling that if you ever start looking it up, my goodness, you might learn a little information about the game show industry. And I don't know if you have the Game Show Network out there. I don't know if they even play it anyways, but that's the Truth or Consequences of fantasy football tonight. Motor City Man Mouse Scott Morganroth, joined by Ryan Skolrud on our broadcast. We do it every week. I don't know how well right we do it every week, but we do it anyways. But Ryan, why don't you let everybody know how accurate you are, and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
All right. Well, last week was a little bit of a rough week in terms of accuracy for our rankings. On fantasypros.com, I'm part of the Expert Consensus and part of their accuracy ranking contest. Last week was a little bit rough on me. Actually, a lot of the rankers who are in the top 25 in accuracy so far in the season struggled last week. There was just a lot of things that didn't go according to what a lot of us foresaw. And so I am still, I believe, number 33 or 34 overall on the season.
33 is a good number, by the way. That's my lucky number. Continue.
Out of about 100, well, we started off with 170. I think we're down to about 150, because once you miss a week, you're out of the contest. So I think I'm about 33rd or so out of 150 rankers. So doing our best to make sure that we can get you as accurate rankings as possible. So you guys can get a hold of me via email, ryan.skolrud@skullkingsports.com. Obviously, you can find us on our website, skullkingsports.com. We have multiple Facebook pages and groups that you can be a part of depending on what sport you want to follow. Just look up Skull King Sports on Facebook, and you will find all of our groups and pages. You can go to Instagram, Skull King Sports, Twitter, @SkullKingSports, or me personally, @Ryan Skolrud. And I think we also have a YouTube channel where you can listen to or watch all of my podcasts, as well as follow the Skull King Sports Fantasy Football Podcast on pretty much every major platform you can find. So,
yeah, that YouTube channel starting to catch on pretty good. With that said, okay, you can follow us on Twitter @Tribune South. Let me repeat that one: Twitter @Tribune South, Facebook and Instagram South Florida Tribune, YouTube channel South Florida Tribune. I'll give you 6 reasons why you should subscribe to it. We have the Sports Exchange, No Limits, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Real and the Rare, Fantasy Football, show for what you're watching and listening to. South Florida Tribune Podcast, we have a lot of good stuff on that one as well. So please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. I have a section in there called Motor City Monitor, where we cover a lot of the sports in Michigan, as well as Metro Detroit, my hometown. We also have a section for our media distribution partners. So a lot of our affiliates go ahead and send us material. We have columnists there as well. And last but not least, all the broadcasts appear on their WSAN dropdown. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And Ryan and I connected on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth. So now if you want to hear the audio version of this broadcast, you can do so by going to Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. So Ryan, great week for us. Really enjoy doing this. Enjoy it when we do it by ourselves, or if we ever had anybody, it doesn't make any difference. It's still a lot of fun, and we try to keep, between your fantasy knowledge, and I like to bring in lots of facts because of my background covering the sport for many, many years. I think we were able to bring a nice blend here. So I do want to close the broadcast by letting everybody know that this is COVID-19, folks. Okay, there's a lot on the line, like lives. And I have a feeling COVID's not going away anytime soon. So I'm sure I can speak for Ryan, but it's important to mask up, use some common sense, do some social distancing, be safe out there. If the President of the United States can get it, Nick Saban, or the average individual, please be careful, folks. We don't have a vaccine. It's not worth it. So any closing thoughts, Ryan?
The only other thing I was going to add is make sure you vote. I'm one of those guys that I don't have the same views as even my neighbors. I don't have the same views as even some of my family members. That doesn't matter. I want everyone to vote. You can't complain if you don't vote. Let your voice be heard. Be part of the democratic process. I don't care who you vote for. I'll be honest, I don't care. I want everyone to have the opportunity to go out and to vote. Make sure you get it done.
And if there's ever a time in our American history when you really need to do it, considering the situation that we're all in right now, dire straits, COVID-19 or no COVID-19, I think this is probably one of the most important elections in our country's history. So, Ryan, I definitely agree with you there. I don't know how well our scores are going to be, but I can tell you right now, we are tied on this one. Vote, everybody. So on behalf of Ryan Skolrud, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Fantasy Football. We'll catch you next week. Have a good weekend, Ryan, and everybody else. Be safe out there. Good evening.